Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing a brand new review, and today I'm going to be reviewing Wonka, which of course stars Timothee Chalamet playing the role of Willy Wonka in the prequel musical, of course, to the well-beloved character from Roald Dahl books. And I'm going to be giving some thoughts on the film ahead of its release this Friday in the UK, and I believe the week after in America. So this is an exciting one to talk about. There's a lot to talk about, actually, if I'm being really honest. And as always, I do want to kickstart our social medias. This review, of course, has come of the embargo. It's going to be one of the last big releases for the year, if I'm being honest, especially for us being able to see them early. We're very fortunate to see them early. So I'm trying to do this completely spoiler-free. Of course, you know who Willy Wonka is and what he does for a living. You know, of course, he has a factory and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to ruin the plot specifics of this because I'll talk about the marketing very briefly as well. But I'm going to give my thoughts on it heading into the film itself, and of course a glowing recommendation come the end of it, alongside a few other things. And if you want to find out about other videos, go grab us on social media, linktree.com/cinemasavvy. You can get us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, as well as obviously our merchandise and a few other things. But talking Wonka, I've been very lucky to see the screening today, as attending a press screening. It will be yesterday by the time this video goes up, and I'm going to talk about my thoughts heading into it. Very briefly, I thought the film was wonderful, and I'm going to get into that properly ever so shortly. But a real big thing for me was heading into this film. I'll be honest, I don't want a Willy Wonka prequel film. It was something that I know a lot of people laughed at. It was announced years and years ago before the creative team who came on board. This was one of those Warner Brothers has X in production, and like many other X's in production at Warner Brothers recently, things haven't gone to plan. Some absolute masterpieces along the way, but I was not sure about this. And then, of course, Timothee Chalamet, cast you bring on board Paul King, Simon Farnaby, and I still wasn't sure, but that is the creative team behind Paddington and the cardinal sin at that point in time. I'd never seen a Paddington film. Everyone worships them, everyone loves them, my family worship them. There is a lot of replica Paddington stuff in this house. Of course, British people have seen a lot more Paddington stuff in the last couple of years of the royal family, so it is safe to say what that has done for that character, bringing it back into pop culture, modern culture, whatever you want to call it. But the announcement of the creative team moving into this, I think it's imperative, and that changed my mind somewhat on this, that it's very, I know Timothée Chalamet is of course not British, but it had immediately a British productions environment. David Heyman, of course, with his work on the Harry Potter films as well. Warner Brothers shooting over here. The musical aspect, the fact, of course, it's the Roald Dahl is very much a British author. So there were some things really working for me. And then the first trailers came out, and I'll be honest, I wasn't sure. I'm going to talk about the trailers in a bit because I'm going to be criticising those more than the film, because the film itself, I said, is wonderful. It's one of my favourite films of the year immediately. I'm not overreacting. I had a sublime experience today seeing this at the cinema. I did not expect to emote to a Willy Wonka prequel film. And I guess even further backdrop, growing up like many people, we'd have read Roald Dahl books, loved them. The films as well. I loved both Charlie and the Chocolate Factory films. I prefer the 2005 version. And I've heard that a lot more in the last few weeks, which is great, which shows that our age group is somewhat growing up and entering these sorts of discussions. So that was going for it. And again, you bring Timothée Chalamet, who is one of the best actors of his generation, if I'm being honest. I know he's only 27, 26, I think. He'll be 27 soon or something like that, I don't know. But the people he's worked with, what he's done with his career, the fact this isn't the only Warner Brothers film he's led recently. Of course, we wait patiently for March the 1st for Dune Part 2. But seeing him in a musical, something slightly different to what I've seen him in before, I was curious by. And I didn't know if he'd be able to deliver with that in a lead role. And again, looking at the history of this character, both on screen and off screen, it's can Chalamet jump to doing that? And he absolutely did and nailed it. And first and foremost, I guess that's an apology from me for doubting this. I did see the Paddington films before this a couple of months ago. I've spoke about both of them. I do very much like them. And I know people are going to add this into this equation. We'll get buzzwords like whimsical, British, all that sort of stuff popping up over the next few weeks, which is great. But first and foremost, I enjoyed this film because I genuinely thought it was a charming film. I don't think it was charming because it was British. I think there's a real emotional story there that I did not expect from something such as this, especially when you take the phrase origin and apply it to a very well-known character, especially when you look at the 2005 film where people criticised that there was a Wonka origin. There were nerves, of course, spreading, but I can't quite grasp the emotion that this film had. And I don't really smile much when I'm watching films, but I even laughed out loud a few times with this. And it's not like The Grinch grew a heart, but it was something very different, and I've not felt like this in the cinema in a long time. I love going into the films, being blown away, being wowed. I feel like I'm on another planet. But I've never really sat there and just been quite cheerful watching something, which maybe says more about me than it does this film. But I had that throughout, if I'm being honest. an incredible ensemble cast to go with Timothée Chalamet first and foremost. There are so many incredible British actors in here with comedy backgrounds as well. I couldn't quite believe what I was watching at times when you're getting Johnson from Peep Show in like a leading antagonist role. You're then getting some young up and coming comedians, with Ellie of course as well being involved in that, and there's so many greats. You've got legends, you've got Rowan Atkinson, you're then getting stage presence, you're bringing in Olivia Colman and whatnot. I guess there's a Peep Show reunion saying that actually. Even Matt Lucas coming on board, it felt so right watching this. And I know I mentioned Timothée Chalamet being American to begin with. The fact that almost everybody around him was British, I thought was perfect to it. But again, going back to that crux, the emotional story, I did not expect this film to go into a way, and it did. I'm not going to give specifics because I don't think the trailer did a very good job at showing that. And I don't want to say what it is for you all at home to go in knowing it. And I think the blinder you go into this film, the more entertaining it's going to be. Yes, you know he's Willy Wonka. Yes, you know it's an origin. He becomes obviously a chocolatier who ends up having a factory. But if you go in knowing nothing by those, you're going to have an even better experience because it's funny from start to end. It's heartwarming from start to end. And every single person on board in this film delivers with it. I mentioned some of the actors. I've got to talk the costumes. I've got to talk the production design. The film looks phenomenal. And we're in this age, we've spoken recently, I spoke a lot about budgets, very expensive films, looking cheap, looking poor, dreadful VFX. Knowing that these are real sets where there are actors singing, they're dancing, they're performing, there's extras, it's not AI, all this sort of stuff that's been discussed in the last few months. This is the perfect example of why actors need to go on strike, why the writing's so important. You know, we've got, I mentioned Simon Farnaby and Paul King co-writing this as well as, of course, directing Paul King. If you don't have that attachment to it, it's not going to work. And I know it's very tricky with Roald Dahl at the moment in the aspect that Netflix has, I believe, picked up the rights to everything but Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which I still don't know how that's going to fundamentally work. It's still exciting to see this, and I think the timing to release this film, the December film, I've always said December is this incredible slot. Last year, Avatar grossed 2.2 billion. I don't think it's going to be those kinds of numbers, but it has become this certainly in the last 10-15 years for me, the December slot is one of the best slots you can have to release a film. And for Warner Bros to stick with this, of course the strikes have ended. We've seen the cast at the world premiere in London last week. They're on the press tour now. I think it's really exciting for it because there's so much I want to find out more about this film. And I do think this is a film that's going to not just be popular with fans, maybe with film circles or families. I think this is going to travel with word of mouth. I think it's going to be incredibly disappointing if it doesn't, because this is genuinely the type of film that you would want to watch at this time of year, that you'd want to go with friends, with family too, and I just have to absolutely give it to them. I know I'm not talking much about the story with this. I spoke about some of the great production design, the costumes and things like that. I can't fault the craft. And I think that's where this experience lies, is that it's not just an entertaining film, it's a great film. And I think it's something that a lot of people are going to be attached to. And actually came out the cinema thinking, I do want to watch this again quite soon. And then the brain was just spinning on the way home, and I was thinking, okay, this is one of those films where people are just going to go back to over and over again. And it's really hard to not think about Paddington 2. To see how people spoke about Paddington 2 over the last couple of years, I believe it's on 100% on Rotten Tomatoes still, or on 99% or something like that. It's a film that I've never come across somebody that's disliked it. And I think that could be the case with this. Not maybe as strong as Paddington. I think you'll of course have people that compare this to the 70s version, the 05 version, the book, anything like that. It's obviously much bigger in scale. But I just can't imagine anyone sitting through this for 2 hours and thinking, I hated this, what a waste of time, this is dreadful. I really couldn't believe someone could be like that. Maybe they are, maybe I'm a minority, who knows, but I thought this is exceptional and I've got to recommend it off there. And normally I'd jump about saying what was the experience like at the cinema. The screening today was friends and family screenings. It wasn't just press. There were +1s, +2s, +3s, so you were able to gauge a reaction with younger audiences as well. And I thought that was really interesting, that it seemed very popular amongst that crowd as well as the adults. Very emotional at times. I was very emotional at one scene in particular towards the end. I think a lot of people are going to have that in common, and kind of talking about the emotions of this film. Something really interesting, which I was thinking ahead of the nostalgic side of point. This isn't a insert everything you saw in the past. This isn't insert this, this isn't this. There are moments where it lends itself just via history by default to certain characters, to certain moments, to certain musical notes. And I really like that. But this film is not saying this is going to be something we've seen. It has its own take. And I think that's what's so important when you're doing an adaptation. You want to keep your idea original to the filmmakers, to the creative team, to rather than have to follow something completely as it was 50 years ago at this point in time. So fundamentally, a massive, massive plus recommending this. I don't even know how to end a review like this. I'll talk about Hugh Grant, because I've not spoken about Hugh Grant yet. He doesn't steal the film as the Oompa Loompa, but if they hadn't have put most of his scenes in the trailers, I think he might have. I think he's great in this. I absolutely love him, of course, Paddington 2. Then he was great in The Gentleman. He's very much on the comeback at the moment. And I think, again, it's another example of you bringing this British actor to play this very specific role. And you can tell he's having fun doing so. And I think that's the same for every person in this ensemble cast. Really, I did not expect to connect to the film in a deep and meaningful way. Yeah, I did. And that's going to be how I fondly remember this film. As I said, I will be watching it again. And I think it's going to be very popular, and I would encourage people to go out and see it in a crowd, go out and see it with your friends, your family, whoever you would want to see a film like this with. It is very worth going with too. So that's going to probably do it for this review today. It's very tricky doing this because I really don't want to talk about the story. I want to keep it as quiet as I can, and I want people to be able to experience this. The musical numbers I haven't spoke about. One small niggling criticism is at some points there's one or two songs where it feels... I mean, I'm no expert in musicals, so someone can happily correct me, but there's a couple of brief moments where it feels somewhat auto-tuned, or you can see some performers doing better than others. And I think that's something that happens a couple of times. Again, I'd need to listen to the songs again when they release online, or watch the film again to really have that clarification. But there's one or two brief moments, but I do think everyone delivers with this. And it's going to be one of those films where every cast member is proud of this moving forward through to the end of their career. They will be talking about this. Listen, Timothee Chalamet, he's going to be, I think, I mean, I know Austin Butler's in Dune Part 2, but I think there's a couple of young actors who are going to be the next generation of sort of A-list actor that people talk of, that people follow film to film to film. I think they're two right at the top of the tree. I know that Jacob Elordi is very much popping up at the moment, but of course we only have to wait till March the 1st to see them in action with one another, because I'm clearly still not over Dune being delayed. The right thing to do, but at least we still got a Timothée Chalamet book adaptation from Warner Brothers this year, didn't we? So that's going to do this review. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for getting through to the end of it. I hope you've enjoyed it, and as I said, any questions, do let us know. We'll answer them, but we won't go into spoilers, and we shall see you on the next one. Take care.